Welcome to another episode of the Embodied Union podcast. I'm Charlie.
I'm Lindsay.
And today we're going to talk about healing sexual blocks in relationship, which has been a huge part of my journey.
I would say the same, just in different ways. So let's jump straight into it. What have been yours, or have you, what's the story for you?
So years and years of completely dishonoring my body, crossing my own body boundaries, saying yes to sex when I was actually a no. Sex was very performance-based. I had really strong anxious attachment patterns, so I slept around essentially. I lost my virginity when I was 17, not in a beautiful, romantic, rose petals on the bed kind of way. In the street, not with my boyfriend. And that kind of just set the tone to me having casual sex. And at that age, I didn't know what was my pleasure. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what I wanted. It was kind of a way for me to create connection and to have this desire of being seen by the masculine fulfilled, because I didn't have my dad, and so I was always looking for that male attention. So just from 17 through to probably 25, 6, 7, from a decade, I would say.
Yeah.
Just lots of unconscious sex. It was just a way for me to be liked, to secure the connection, to keep the peace in relationship. And I'd faked every orgasm I'd ever had with partners. They would have thought they were doing a very good job. And it's not to say they weren't. I was bringing a lot of just unconscious material. But yeah, fake orgasms, lots of performance, lots of just having sex when my body was actually a no. So imagine a decade of that. My body shut down. She went really numb. I was always very much in my head, dissociated. And I could push through those. I could push through the numb. I could push through the no. I kept on crossing my own boundaries until my body started screaming no. Right, so I would have sex and then I would have thrush immediately afterwards, or it started to be more painful. And I think as I started to do more self-development and my worthiness started to grow a little bit, I really became aware that I had all of this resentment in my body, and I was mad. I was mad at the men or the partners I was sleeping with who couldn't tell I was faking it. I was mad at myself for being in this dynamic, and I was mad at sex. I was mad that I thought I was supposed to like sex, and I fucking hated it. I hated penetration, and I am my own perpetrator, and I created so much dissociation and shutdown in my body, and it really was a pain point in every single relationship.
Yeah, okay.
Every single man felt rejected by me, because eventually I'd start withdrawing from sex if we were together long enough.
So you would start and there would be sex.
In the beginning I'd put on the show. It was easier to lean in because honeymoon energy would spark something in me.
Yeah.
But then as I settled more into the familiar and the relationship got solid, my dissociation and disconnection and numbness would just be really present. And so eventually I would kind of back away, and partners, it was a shit show, really. Men feeling rejected, me feeling pressured. I'd been cheated on because I couldn't show up for sex. One of the things I thought that could help would be, let's do open relating, because then you can go and get your needs met somewhere else, and I'll just keep trying to work on why I feel so shut down. And it was just such a pain point. I really did not enjoy intimacy, didn't even like kissing, I felt so avoidant.
Sounds really it was off the cards.
It was a disaster. It's the thing, and I used to have so much frustration around it, and well, why can't my partner just love me anyway? Even if I can't show up for sex, why do I need to? Why can't you just love me? But it's I really have this compassion for myself and for everyone that the partners I've been with. Intimacy is such a huge part of relationship. It really is. And sex gets to be this magical thing that you can do. There's you're the one person I can do this with. And it's I really wasn't available for it once I'd cemented the relationship. In the beginning, let's go. And then, so it was just this loop that I was in for 10 years. And I speak to women all the time that have a similar story.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
It is. It's like they're okay to show up in the beginning and then during the honeymoon phase. And then once that honeymoon energy, which is novelty, excitement, a bit of hope, once that fades away, as it always does, they're left with the quality of like the lovemaking, and often it is subpar. And so I speak to women all the time that feel really unmet. And I felt very unmet. And it's not because these men or women that we're with are not meeting us. They're not, but they can't because we're not meeting ourselves. So how can someone meet me in my pleasure if I don't even know where or what and who my pleasure is? So, yeah, that's kind of where I was. That's the big journey that I went on. And
what got you moving through that? Like, what was it for you? You said something about personal development. Was it self-worth? Like, what do you feel like kind of brought you through, or, you know, starting to improve it more than anything?
Well, the first thing that made me realize I could no longer continue what I was doing, which was like dishonoring my no, like having intimacy be such a block, was doing self-development. And I started realizing that I couldn't continue to cross my body's boundary. Like I just couldn't, the resentment was too loud, the no was too loud. And so the first thing that I did, which I think, it sounds like it's not really on like getting me towards being open and receptive to intimacy, but I think it's a pivotal part, is I started saying no. It was like, and at the time, I was also in the adult entertainment industry. I was stripping. So I was doing like shows at parties, and that had to stop too. Because even though at times I really enjoyed being in that industry, I was also not really honoring my body's truth. You know, like going to these parties, didn't really want to be there. Men are drinking, men are drunk. It's like not the energy. And so I had to quit that job.
Yeah.
I was in a relationship at the time, and we went into celibacy just to completely like take the pressure off of sex. I just needed it to be gone. I needed it, everything that was a no, just to stop. And so finding my voice and finding my no, I think, was the beginning.
Yeah, okay.
Which wasn't such a gift for the partner I was with at the time, because he's wanting us to heal my intimacy blocks so we can come together and have more intimacy. And suddenly we've got this 3-month nothing. So that it can, because really one of the things that drives or did drive my resistance and still does to sex and intimacy is if I feel any pressure around it.
Good
so
to know.
taking the pressure away was also like part of the healing. And then it was really self-exploration. Like I went really hard into self-pleasure. And to be honest, a lot of the self-pleasure, like, well, I think there's masturbation, which most people are familiar with. It's like self-pleasuring to orgasm, usually with the use of an aid like porn, fantasy, or like a vibrating toy set at level 50,000, something like that. And so there's masturbation, which I was doing occasionally, and I could reach orgasm with the use of like porn and toys. But then establishing my no, finding my voice, moving from masturbation into self-pleasure, which was like finding ways to connect to my own eros and sexual energy without the use of external stimulation. You know, like I'm following all these.
Must have been hard.
Yes, especially when I've been disconnected, numb, and dissociated for so long, and relying on external, like something to watch or something that's vibrating really intensely to kind of kick my body into turn on. Suddenly I've got none of that, and it's like, well, where's my turn on? Like, how do I actually kickstart my turn on without all of these aids? And so for me, moving into a more conscious form of self-pleasure, I actually really suffered in that as well. I felt not good enough. I felt like it wasn't working. I wasn't wet enough. I'm not turned on enough. I can't do this. I'm bored.
Yeah. Okay.
So I kept trying to show up for self-pleasure. I'd put it in my calendar, and I'd get there, and I would get bored, or I would just get distracted, or I'd want to have a nap. It's like I struggled to start my turn on.
Yeah, so it feels like there might have been like some type of shutdown or some type of like resistance or something out of the conscious awareness.
Well, I think I knew what was happening. It's like I knew I was numb. I knew I was dissociated. I knew I had all these like trauma inside of my body from like pushing past the no. But it's like I found this world of tantra and self-pleasure, and I was like, okay, cool, something, I can do that. And then I couldn't do it. And so then I fell into that trap of like the shoulds. I should be more turned on than I am. I should be more wet than I am. This still really isn't working for me. And I really persisted. I persisted for a really long time, and then sometimes there would be like glimpses of eros. I had moments like with a partner where when we were really in presence, I would like feel it kickstart in my body, and I was like, I got the taste. I got the taste that there was something available to me that I'd never tapped into before, but it still felt very elusive.
Yeah. And I just wonder, like, I guess I haven't had this conversation much with women because I only really work with men. It's like, what was it about sex? Like, for women, is it okay to be sexual or into sex or into, like, feeling pleasure and all those sorts of things? Like, is it something that women talk about? Like, did you have girlfriends that you could talk about or talk to around all this growing up?
I think women are extremely sexual. I think they're sexual. I think they're sensual. I think all of it's like a big yes for lots of women. And when I was going through, I feel blocked, I feel numb, like I hate penetration, what's going on? Like, I spoke openly about it to the women in my life. And back then in my 20s, I wasn't really in, like, for lack of a better term, like a conscious community. I just had my high school friends that I was still hanging out with, and like they were having a great time with sex. And I actually thought they were lying. I was like, there's no fucking way that you're enjoying this thing that I hate. I'm like,
one night stands and I came, you know.
One of my friends told me she had a one night stand and she came 9 times. And I was just like, you're lying. I couldn't buy into it. And so I was having these conversations, but not with women who could point me in the right direction.
Right.
It took a lot of my own deep diving, going into self-development, and eventually landing at Tantra. And books, like I read books, and some of the most pivotal ones are the Diana Richardson book. It is the
Tantric Orgasm for Women?
Yes, Tantric Orgasm for Women. That, like the first 10, 50 pages, I felt like she was speaking to me, like speaking around how women get into the trap of, like, sexual education mostly comes from porn and then from our friends and speaking around like, oh, I had 9 orgasms in a one night stand. It's like, oh, this is kind of what we're learning, and we're dating men or women who have also modeled from porn. And it's like that whole model of sex is very friction based, in and out, hard and fast. It's based on the fuel of intensity, lust, infatuation. And when you're going at it from that way, which I did for so long, I think a woman's body eventually burns out because she's so much more sensitive. And I guess coming back to how I started to make some big shifts, I started to learn about how, like, a woman's system is very energetic, you know, and like energy play is I'll say it's the complete opposite of friction-based, hard and fast penetration. Like, that can be a good time once the woman's energy is on.
Yeah.
But many women don't know how to activate their own energetic arousal system and are going straight to the penetrative in and out model of sex. And so it's like, when I started to learn about erotic blueprints and discovered I'm actually energetic, and I'd been trying to do self-pleasure and sex in a very sexual way, that was one of the keys, you know. But then it's like, oh, I'm energetic. What does that mean? Okay, energy, cool. Where's the switch? So, but learning about that, learning about soft penetration and slow sex, they were concepts I learned from Diana Richardson's work, and that changed the game for me. Because one of the limiting beliefs I had around sex was like, I'm not wet enough, I'm not turned on enough, I'm just not enough. I'm not enough was the big theme. And so a soft penetration practice really takes the pressure away, because we're not like, you get to use a lot of lubricant or like coconut oil. Your partner is soft and it's more meditative. It's like we come together, we put, like, you come inside of me, but with lots of like oil just so you can be in there. And then there's no in and out. We just kind of meditate, breathe together. And that kind of is one way for an energetic woman to kickstart her energetic system. It's very much like, there's no force. It's just you're invited into me in this really beautiful way, and then there's so much presence and stillness which allows for the energy to come on, and then it can transform into whatever it wants to be. So learning about energy, learning more about Tantra, having the relationship with you as well. Like you already, when I met Lindsay, when I met you, you were like, you're energetic. I'm like, what does that mean? What do you mean I'm energetic? You're like, I can feel that you are. And I had no idea. So meeting you and learning about energy, anticipation, like almost kissing or almost fucking or almost all these things that really support an energetic system, like becoming alive. So, and if I'm so honest, I still feel like I'm in the healing of it.
Yeah.
I still, like a decade of shoulds and I'm broken and crossing my own boundary. There are times when my body forgets that I'm with you. I'll have moments, like intrusive thoughts from the past pop into my head when we were making love, and it's me like having sex at a party when I was 21 and it was like borderline, like not okay, you know? And so these thoughts, I still have so much compassion for like the residue that's in my system for what it went through. But one of the ways that we work with this, and it really ties into the work that we do with men and women and couples, is we have a practice of mindfulness. When we are making love, it's like you have a level of presence that if I zone out or I go off into my head, it's like you can catch that and it's like, babe, where are you? Or you'll do something different. It's like you'll not just keep going. It's like, all right, something's happened here. Maybe we move, maybe we switch positions, maybe we stop, maybe you make me laugh, maybe you like jiggle me around, like you'll do something to pull me out of it. So like having mindfulness during lovemaking has been really healing. So I think what would be amazing, before we go even deeper into like you and I, how we work through this together, I've spoken from like the frame of a woman who has potentially trauma in her body. And I think the blocks that men and women have towards sex, they can be very similar, but they can also be very different. And one of the things I kept hitting up against in my relationship, me feeling like disconnected, would be my partner feeling rejected. And so I would feel his neediness, like he would need sex from me and I have so much resistance to it, and we had this like loop of suffering. And I know that you've shared with me in the past, you can really resonate with the men that I dated. So I'd love for you to share like that experience.
Yeah.
The other side of this coin.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, I've mentioned it a few times in men's work, but one of my first sexual experiences was witnessing like sexual assault. So from a very young age, I was like worried about being a perpetrator, worried about coming across in a way that felt unsafe. So I think my whole thought around intimacy and sex is that it needs to be slow, it needs to be consensual, it has to have like all these elements of safety, because I would be in a panic, you know, even if it was just talking to somebody or liking somebody and then making the first move. Like I was terrified of making the first move, not out of fear of rejection. It was more just I didn't want somebody to say yes when they were actually a no. That terrified me, absolutely terrified me. So thinking about it, like as far as how I sort of did intimacy growing up, it was always in a way where it got to the point where it was like the woman had to make the move, you know, because I would be charming and I would be into them, but I wouldn't do that in case I was reading it wrong. I didn't want to get it wrong because I didn't want to hurt myself or anyone else. And I think in a way that's really supported me in my life. But what I came to learn when I started to be like you know, sexually active as a teenager was that I used sex as a way to feel loved. And I think this is so often the case for men, is they collapse the connection with their partner for love. So it's one of the ways that that I was receiving love or getting love. So it would be, you know, 2 to 3 days and we hadn't had sex, and it would be, they would feel this neediness because they would feel like there's a lack of connection or a lack of love and it had me, you know, come across needy. So then there's these two parts of me, you know, in opposition of each other. This part of me that's doesn't want to be too pushy or doesn't want to come across takey or needy, and there's the other part that's just pleading and needy at the same time. So it would be my own internal battle, and at times it was, you know, like not congruent. You know, there was a real lack of congruency for me, you know, and then it would be this dance of like trying to get it and being good and saying yes when I was a no to doing tasks or being a good partner or whatever it might be, because this would all add up to me being able to have sex. And it's like, it was bullshit.
Covert contract.
100%. And to me, I look back on that and I just think, I you know, I work with men. There's men that are in their 40s that still struggle with this, you know, with this neediness and wanting to connect with their partner and feel like sex equals love. And that, for some, like, it's one of our men's biggest fears is to be in a sexless relationship, you know. So you talking about, you know, being in a relationship and feeling like that drop off or not that interested, I think that for so many men, it's this fear of that happening, so they double down, but they double down in what is not working already. It's not working. They're not learning anything new. I wasn't learning anything new. Like, for me, I would do what would work. So in that sense of like thinking that sex should be, well, sex is to orgasm, you know, and for a man, it's not done until he comes. There's this, like, you know, this train of thought, I think, for men is just like...
And for women, I think.
Maybe, yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, they're like, well, if he's done, then I can be done.
I definitely had that.
Yeah, and I think women do. And I speak to this because if I'm working with men and there's so many women that state that they're dissatisfied and yet every man thinks he's a god in the bedroom, someone's lying, you know? And this is why, for me, it was such a big leap in my relationship and in intimacy that I started to learn about intimacy and around like what sex can be like and the different ways, and whether it's love languages or erotic blueprints or whatever it might be, that had me kind of go, oh, people are different. Like, each person's different. And I think for men, typically, if we don't use porn, because I didn't really use porn, it was how do I learn intimacy is through my partners that I've had. And so if a man's not had many partners, it's kind of like, where is he learning from? How is he going to be able to, like, you know, build his knowledge in a way that feels congruent? And it's bloody hard, you know?
Like, what? That's the thing, though. Where are people getting their sex education? You know, like, really, like, beautiful, conscious, tantric sex education. It's not available until you're an adult and you're in enough pain that you have to go looking for answers. Yeah,
well, or in my case, it's like your marriage gets opened, like the marriage gets opened, and then it's having, you know, learning from being in situations where you're witnessing sort of even like how others do it, or in a way it could be noticing what's actually turning somebody on versus what you think is going to turn you on.
So the peak experiences that you had when you opened your marriage, you guys were open relating, your sex education came from those experiences, like threesomes,
big time,
foursomes, whatever you guys were doing. Like, you learned a lot there.
Learned heaps, because like for me, I'm a visual learner. You know, there's lots of ways that people like to learn, but for me, it was like, when I can understand it, it really makes a difference for me. So trying to explain it is one thing, but then witnessing how it actually occurs is so different. So to watch somebody like yourself, say, that's energetic, that might not have ever really enjoyed sex, to be with someone else that's skillful in energy play, it's like you watch this person go from not being turned on to being insanely turned on. And it's like, that's magic. That is like serious skill. And I want to know how to do that. Like, you know, I
Right.
think for most men, we think we are good lovers, you know, and if we watch porn or model it off porn, it's like we've got to last long, we've got to be rock hard, we've got to be ready to go, like all these big pressure pieces for us that I don't even think actually get us what we want. Because this is the thing. It's like sex doesn't actually equal love. Sex is sex. And the love making, what I learned is that in relationship, love making is happening all the time. Like it's all the time. The intimacy, the connection, the anticipation, it gets to be there such that going for, like, you know, when you initiate to have sex or it arises, it's very organic.
I think that's a really beautiful thing that we do. It's like when you come to lead something sexual, we've been in the energy of foreplay, like you said, for 24 hours. Like the build-up is there. It's like, I think if anyone can take anything away, it's like foreplay it doesn't actually have to stop. And it shouldn't. Like in your intimate relationship, of course, life is life and things happen, but little moments for intimacy can happen in a look, in a touch, in a message. It's ongoing, and it's an art that you get to practice daily if you want to have an intimate, delicious, passionate, playful relationship full of polarity that lasts the distance.
Absolutely. Like fountain of youth right there. People, it's like the stats are out. People that have regular sex look younger.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an accident. Like we're having a good time.
Well, it's life force. Eros is life force. It's like creative energy, sexual energy. It's the energy that does give birth to life. And if we're just circulating that within our own systems together, it would make sense.
Yeah. And I think so moving forward with this, it then became like, for me, what I got really clear about, what I had to learn through men's work, through shadow work, through therapy, all these things is like, how do I receive love, and what makes me feel safe in my body, and knowing that I am loved or not loved, and knowing how to discern between the two and have more boundaries and better boundaries, like not saying yes. Like I think for a lot of men, we say yes to sex when it's available and we don't even check in with ourselves. It's just, well, it's happening, well, let's go, because it's scarcity. It might not happen again for a week, 2 weeks, 3 days, whatever the time frame for each individual man is. And that scarcity, I feel like, has us not be fully present, not be fully open to like what is really in the depths of what's possible when it comes to intimacy and sex and pleasure. And the thing that really turned the key for me was doing a period of celibacy. And in actual fact, it was abstinence for me that really did it. I did a month of no self-pleasure, no touching, no masturbation, no sex, no kissing, basically nearly no touch. And the first week or so, it was like the world went black and white. Seriously, it felt like a part of me was dying. And it kind of was, in the sense of, I feel like it's really similar. I tell all men this: abstinence or celibacy is is fasting. So if you've ever fasted, the first day or the first missing of a meal that you have is usually the hardest. Once you're over that 24 hours of pain and discomfort, it then starts to balance out, and then you start to feel really good. And that's what I noticed. So after a week or two, I started to notice that it's like, well, if I can't have sex, how do I experience love? And how do I experience like beauty? And, you know, how do I receive the colors of the cosmos, essentially? And it allowed me to sort of start to cultivate it within myself. I started to notice myself needing less sleep. I could live off less sleep. I was eating better. It was like the highs and the lows, this insatiable craving that I was always sitting there started to let go its grip. What a fucking relief. Like, what a relief that was. And you know, can't recommend it enough for any man that hasn't tried it. It's not about not ejaculating. It's not about all that. It's about literally re-identifying your relationship to sex and to intimacy?
Well, it's like anything that we feel like there's craving or attachment to, it has a power over us, so we want to bring out, like, it's not that we can't enjoy it in the future, but you want to bring your power back.
Yeah, I felt a real recentering of that, and it was a 3-month period to do so. And, I think because it came to a point, and I'm sure listeners have probably been at this point too, is it came to a point where it was causing stress in the relationship.
Your neediness?
Yeah. Yeah, neediness and the mismatch. Like, I think a lot of people feel like they have a mismatch in libido. It's like both of you are sexual beings. It's just one of you is not turned on.
But I think both are coming to the arena with unspoken words and blocks of their own.
Totally. And so, getting on the same page and coming from a place of like collaboration and bringing the energy and putting the effort in a beautiful way is so needed. And I think for some people it might be the best thing that they could possibly do.
It's a period of celibacy.
Yeah, and it seems counterintuitive like it does. It's like we want to have more, so let's have none for a period of time. But it honestly, taking a couple of steps back to take a leap forward is super powerful.
Well, I think the analogy around fasting is really powerful. Maybe that will really land for people, because it is, if you're struggling with, like, you're in that period of like junk food, or you're binging a little bit, you're just off track with food. When you do like a little fast, it's a reset. Everything kind of settles down, and then you get to decide, how do I want to move forward from here? And I think one of the most healing things I find in our relationship is the fact that there is no pressure around sex, because I don't feel neediness from you. Like, as a woman who has like trauma in her body and is very sensitive and a cancer, it's like I am hypervigilant around anything like pressure or being taken from or needy energy. Like, needy energy is the biggest cock block, and I felt it in every relationship because I was so withdrawn. Of course, it was bringing up my partner's more.
Yeah.
And with you, I just feel, it's not that I don't feel your desire, but it's almost like I feel a neutrality. Like, if I say no to sex, there's not even, like, I'll look at you a bit suspicious and like wait for you to take it personally, and you don't. And then I'm gathering evidence that, my no is welcome. And it's you not taking my no personally is really healing. But what that's giving me is this capacity to not take my body's no personally. Because that's also one of the biggest blocks. And I guess it's similar to what you were saying with men. It's like they want to have sex and then it's not happening. It's like they're creating their own problem in their own system. And for me, it's like, my body doesn't want, like, she's not wet, she's not turned on. And like, I'm actually taking that personally, and then I'm projecting that onto my partner, and it just creates this loop of suffering, really.
Can be really hard. And I think, the part for me that I've been working on for quite a while now is I don't, if I feel a lot of desire, and we can use the word, like, if I'm horny, I don't engage in sex, because it's like going to the supermarket when you're hungry. It's like, I'm not going to do that. The energy is off. I'm going to buy terrible products or buy junk food, and will be the same thing. I don't want to be in a position where my desire is overriding my reading of you.
Yes.
And I think that's what can happen when we don't have this in check, and we're not able to use our sexual energy for good in our life, because it can be destructive. Like, I don't want to engage and do something with you that damages our relationship or the connection that we have of safety and trust and intimacy for pleasure, for a moment of pleasure. It's like, it's not worth it for me. So if I have that, it's how do I cultivate that into something else, in my life, whether it's my business, my study, my work, whatever it is, and putting it into my training, whatever it might be. But then when it comes to having intimacy, it's like, I want to feel really present, I want to feel really grounded, and I don't want to feel the pressure either. So it's like, I'm in it just for the play and the fun, and whatever happens, happens. You know, that's something that I have definitely embodied and had to learn.
I know that my body responds to your presence and you're grounded, like that quality of being grounded is like, that's almost what it brings on my turn on, feeling that stability. And yeah, I appreciate that that's something you have cultivated and that you bring. And I think as well, no is never no full stop. You know, like if I feel you wanting to lead something, or it's, I guess when we come together for intimacy, the goal actually is never to have sex. The goal is to, let's get really relaxed, let's do some intimacy practices, let's do some touch, let's do massage, and we'll see what happens.
Yep.
And like, we have sex, so we move into that, but the goal is always just to connect.
Or I get you really riled up and I kiss you on the head and walk away, you know, and that's like, that gets to be a fun thing as well. So it's like, just because, and this is for the men, just because your partner's turned on doesn't mean you have to follow through. Like, give her the experience of being in the wanting. If you're in the wanting, you're alive, you're like stirred in the best possible way, you know, like you're open, you're in your flow, you feel really feminine. Like me to have that experience of you being glowing, it's great. I want that. I don't need to then make it over. I don't need to finish that. It's just like, I want to keep stoking that fire.
And me to have the experience of being in my turn on and then not being taken from, because for my whole life I've always had this story that I'm taken from, my body's just taken from. I have the evidence now that we can be in this moment where it's like I'm pretty much begging you to take from me, and it's like, I love you and let's keep this energy going. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're walking away from me? But it's like we're harnessing energy. We're harnessing energy. We're in the play of energy cultivation. And yeah, I wish it would be amazing for a lot of couples, especially if they're having issues in the bedroom with intimacy, to come back into the play, to come back into the relaxation, to come back into the connection and take the pressure away.
I think it's really important, and I think the block to that, which I think, you know, we've been working with couples for a while now, and it's that the communication. Like we're able to communicate outside of the bedroom as well as inside. So we're able to have a conversation around what's working or what's not working, or feeling like we're not going to be in the blame of each other, revealing about what's going on for us. And I think if couples aren't having those sorts of conversations about daily life, then it's going to be really hard to then layer that communication over the top of like sex and intimacy.
I think as well, like if for someone who has trauma in their body, their communication has to be on point, you know, like there has to be access to my voice so that I can let you in on, I've just gone into a no, or this has just come up, or I have to be able to communicate what's happening with you and have you meet that. So it's like communication is the foundation, which gives space for intimacy to be this magical, delicious space.
Yeah, and I think that getting to that that's why it's not always trying to spice up in the bedroom, like spice your relationship up in the bedroom is not necessarily the case. Sometimes it's actually having some really deep conversations around other things, such that bedroom space is actually nice and clean, you know, energetically.
For sure. I think as well in like terms of spicing it up, it's always, my mind is like, what toy are they going to get? What lingerie are we going to buy? And like these things will get to be fun, but it's really about inspiring polarity, like really coming back to basics. How can we inspire energy just through our presence? Like that is really the hack, you know. It's not the toys and it's not the lingerie, like they're all novelty and novelty wears off. Yeah. It's not a technique. It's really coming together and cultivating a level of presence and sensitivity that allows for us, or allows for me, having felt like my turn on is elusive and far away, the sensitivity allows me to tune into it. And then having a partner that's like, can you breathe into that? Can you sound with that? And we get to see how we can move it through my body. So it's like novelty needs to go in the bin, and like really learning these ways of, yes, communication, so that you can explore authentic intimacy that's can be slow and soft and present. And that's what I think, like wrapping it, coming full circle. How do we heal sexual trauma or blocks in relationship? It's making your intimacy a mindfulness practice.
It is.
I think.
Yeah. And like going deeper. It's like, why am I like this? What's the shadow?
Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Can I name it?
Can I be curious?
Present? Yeah, it's like Lindsay and I, we both do somatic work, and it's like the same way that you would address some kind of behavior pattern or emotional dysregulation in the body, you want to bring those same skills into the bedroom. It's like, oh, I've just gone a bit numb. Like, can we actually talk about that and see, can we go into it a little deeper and understand like where that's coming from? What's the memory?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not always about it going somewhere. So like you're saying, sometimes intimacy can just be a practice. It doesn't have to go anywhere. And if it's set up powerfully, then things can occur. And I think with couples, and especially couples that are out of the honeymoon energy, it's like, what skills are you developing? What repertoire of connection activities, and I guess like how you can be authentic with your partner? Like, what are you doing to cultivate that? Because game day is like the 3-hour sex date, but where's your other intimacy practices that are just actually just building these other aspects of intimacy, and exploration? Because I feel like otherwise we can just go on autopilot. It's like, oh, Friday we have sex and
date night, and
it goes kissing, it goes to this, it goes to that, it goes to this, then we both orgasm, and then that's the end. And it's the same every Friday. Like, I don't want couples to have to do that.
Well, it's like people who work Monday to Friday just to get to the weekend, and that's the part that they enjoy, and then it's back into like the mundane. It's like you can bring a level of desire and play like with you every day of the week, right? Absolutely. That's the real foreplay. That's the real intimacy. And any couple, whether they've been together 5, 10, 20 years, you can implement this today. You can implement it today.
Absolutely. So,
so I guess just to kind of like summarize, there's a lot in this. Like, communication is key. Communication is key. Having the ability to self-reveal and like name what's happening in your body. Finding ways to like work with any neediness that might be present and any blocks or resistance, and doing that together. Like, it gets to be something that you collaborate on as a team, not taking the other one's yes or no personally. It's like,
yeah, such a sensitive area for both parties, when it comes to relationship. It's just, there's so much added into it, that's like, feels like it's a very sensitive topic.
Well, it's like what starts as the thing that pulls couples together in the beginning becomes the biggest point of friction over time. So it's really just learning the skills of relationship, so that, because if you're together and for the long haul, your intimacy is going to change. It's going to continue to change. Kids happen, life happens, whatever happens. So it's like, relationship is a skill. The skill needs to be updated regularly. What are you learning? And it gets to be play.
Yeah. And if for the listeners, if you're listening to this and you're wanting to learn more skills, then, Charlotte and I run a program through Embodied Union, and if you don't follow us already on Instagram, then please do.
Some of the most beautiful work we do is like the intimacy piece, and watching the way couples start looking at each other and hearing about their 3-hour sex dates when they weren't really having sex. Like, that's such a win.
That is the best part of working with couples like that, is we want to see couples thrive.
Yes.
So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys
for your presence
next week.
Big love.
Love you, Critter.
Love you.